Seek, above all, for a game worth playing. Oh baby, it's witchcraft contagious. I felt it for ages. We're out of these cages in this house of mages. It's witchcraft, it's dangerous. Beware of these pages. There's spells of all flavors in this house of mages. In this house of mages. In this house of mages.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Make Yoga Magic Again, the House of Mages podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Aurelian Cumming. The House of Mages is an online school of yoga, tantra, and the magical arts. We run yoga teacher training and have a membership platform that gives you access to an extensive curriculum in developing your magical abilities, with some of the best teachers in the world on various esoteric arts. In this episode, I chat with Jessica Bellantonio. I really resonated with Jessica's story, as we both seem to have really connected with social media in a similar way. Years ago, I was going through what was one of the darkest periods of my life, which was exacerbated by the fact that I was just dealing with it and not really sharing what I was going through with anyone. For some reason, I decided to start writing about what I was experiencing and shared it on Instagram and social media. I got a message from someone who I hadn't seen or spoken to in a long time, explaining that she was going through something similar, and the post I shared made her feel seen and understood. This sparked something in me, and that not only made me feel less alone in that others were feeling the same, but that I could transmute my negative experiences into something positive. From my chats with Jessica, it seemed that her path started in a very similar way. We often hear the negative effects of social media, which are very real and valid, but we often overlook the positive potential it can have as a medium for sharing our experiences in a way that may not as easily be possible without such tools. My guest for this episode is a perfect person to chat with about this, as well as many other things. Jessica is someone who likes to dive deep into any topic, and is constantly finding herself wanting to learn endlessly about different topics that don't commonly arise in day-to-day conversations. Fascinated by how absolutely bizarre this human experience is, enjoying and marveling at the ludicrousness of our shared reality. She often ponders about the ways we live our lives in different corners of the world, each having our own habits and rituals, mostly unconsciously, and how we tend to make our lives so much harder than they need to be by often taking things unnecessarily serious. She is an artist, a yogi, a writer, muser, and sharer of the weird inner goings-on of her unique inner world, helping to give permission for others to do the same. I'm very excited to have her share her powerful story, her lighthearted lens, and playful positivity with you all. So without further ado, please welcome my guest for this episode, Jessica Bellantonio. I actually can't remember how we connected in the first place. It was via Instagram or Facebook, I'm sure. And then so Jess ended up being one of the participants for the original Ritual Embodiment Yoga Teacher Training Program, which was supposed to run in Bali about a year or so ago, right before this whole interesting situation in the world happened. And so since then, obviously, if you've been listening in, you'll see that we've moved everything online, and it's, kind of paved the way for this whole magic yoga school. But yeah, Jess has basically been part of the original crew and has kind of been so good about the whole situation. And yeah, we've just been keeping in touch since then. And we were chatting yesterday about the yoga teacher training program. And yeah, I just thought it'd be really good to have a proper chat to her because yeah, she's just a really interesting human. And I'm really interested in just kind of having a conversation. A few of the chats we've had, I feel like have, kind of had the potential to be some really interesting ones to record. So welcome and thank you for joining me.
No, thank you so much for having me on. It was honestly really unexpected. So the chats that we've had have gone on for a while, so I feel like we could probably talk for hours.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we seem to kind of bounce off the same kind of ideas, which is really cool.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I just wanted to start with, kind of how you came to be interested in yoga And I guess because that's how we met. So yeah, what kind of drew you to the path of yoga? And yeah, if you've got like somewhere really where it started, or somewhere where you could kind of like trace a route of your interest in it.
It's funny. I actually kind of came to yoga at a time in my life where I didn't really have a healthy relationship with exercise. So yoga was kind of it kind of came to me when I was really kind of like heavily into exercise. And for me, yoga initially was that whole physical practice. It was like the really heavy vinyasa flows and the really long, physically exertive classes. And I kind of skipped through the more connected breath work and, the more spiritual part of the practice. And it just kind of developed from there. So it was just that unhealthy relationship with exercise, getting through that and becoming, I guess, more and more in tune with my body and, what else I was getting from yoga. And it just developed from there. So I initially started on YouTube, just following classes on there. And then I started taking classes in person. And like my first yoga teacher in person, her classes were so different to what I was used to. Like I was used to this heavy vinyasa kind of Ashtanga practices. And I went there the first time and it was like really, it was just so different. It was a lot more yin, like really slow. And then there was a lot of mantra. We used a lot of mantra. We used music, kind of sound healing, meditation. And it just kind of opened up this whole new world of, oh, this is kind of what yoga is. Like it's not just this physical practice, which I feel like, in the West, we kind of do that. Yoga it's just exercise, or it's just stretching. We don't kind of relate it to that whole spiritual connectedness, which I believe yoga truly is. Like at its core, that's what yoga is. It's so much more than just the physical asana, which like I said, is really overlooked. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of how I came to it. And then
and how was that? Because I can imagine, because I mean, I had the same thing, and I'm sure everyone did, because I think we think of yoga as the first yoga that we do.
Yeah.
And so, and it sounds like you kind of went on one end of the spectrum, and then you went to your first, especially being your first in-person class, you're like, I'm ready to sweat, I'm ready to do this. And then, we get like I remember, when I first went to my kind of first class like that, I was used to going to like gym yoga classes, because at the time I was, heavy into fitness and stuff, and I had this softly spoken lady. It's like, all right, everybody, you're just going to take a nice big breath in. And I was like, did I come to the right class? I mean, like, there's a big part of me that liked it, but.
So unexpected, but yeah, no, it was really good. And it just, like I said, it opened up like such a whole new world. It's like, oh, okay, I had no idea that this was even a part of yoga.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of helped develop my, I suppose, relationship with exercise, but my relationship with self, like my mental health. And because at that time in my life, I wasn't so good mentally. Like I went through a lot of depression, went through a lot of anxiety, and it was just a really unhealthy point in my growth, I guess. So yoga was kind of that pathway to, oh, there is so much more to life. There is so much more to yourself. There's so much more to connect with, not only within yourself, but within the world around you. And yoga just connected me to that. And like I said, it just kind of progressed from there. But yeah, I'm honestly so grateful that it came into my life when it did, because I don't know where I'd be now if it hadn't. But,
yeah, awesome. So I'm interested, because what you were saying, your relationship with exercise, what was the difference in what you found? Because did you look up other exercise things on YouTube before you found yoga, or like what was it that made you even put in that search term? Because I'm really interested to know, because I guess like similar people go to both, but then also there is a bit of a divide in them as well.
So I was originally doing a lot of, I don't know if you've heard of Fitness Blender on YouTube, but they do a lot of high intensity interval training kind of workouts. So that was initially what I was doing and spending a lot of time doing. I do, hours a day. So I was really hard on my body doing that, and then doing heavy weights and forcing myself to run, and just, it was a whole mess. But I don't remember exactly what I typed into the search bar, but it would have been, I don't know, but the class that I came to is a bit of a interval style yoga. So it was a yoga flow intermixed with interval training, I guess. So it was kind of a mix of both, which was perfect because I kind of wanted to stretch as well, because I was too lazy to stretch afterwards. I was like, no, that's mental. I need to be doing the heavy stuff. So I was like, oh, if I can maybe mix, some stretching in with the workout, maybe that'll be the way to go. And then, I came across the said vinyasa flow and I loved it. I loved it so much. And then I started doing some of her classes and, she had those heavier classes, the faster pace, the more strength focused classes, which were really good for me at the time. I guess it didn't necessarily help the whole exercise addiction, but it opened up that pathway, which was great. So
we have a very similar way that we got into it, because I was doing really into the high intensity interval training. I was doing a bit of CrossFit and other things, but I was really into have you heard of Kayla Itson's? Her kind of hers were intense. It was actually a good friend of mine. She was doing her workouts, and then she's like, "Do you want a real workout? Try this." And I was like, "This will be easy." And I remember I just couldn't walk. It was jump squats and jump lunges, and it was crazy. Yeah, but it was so good. And I got addicted to that kind of stuff. And so, but it's so interesting. It's kind of, yoga's kind of like a gateway into spirituality and normalizing it a little bit. Because I'm really interested to get to the spiritual side of it, even just how you found it, how it was did it relate to anything you were doing before? How's your kind of spiritual journey evolved? I know that's a broad term, but I guess, even from the start, were you always interested in the cosmos and the unknown, or was it something that sparked from yoga or something else?
Ooh, that's
big. Just a little question.
Just a little one. I think from a young age, not quite going into spirituality yet, but from a young age, I've always been quite drawn to witchcraft. I've always been really interested in fantasy as a genre, as I suppose the removing ourselves from reality, the stuff that's kind of unknown, that whole mystical element of, what we don't find in our everyday life. So that's always really intrigued me and attracted me to something more. I don't know if when I was younger that I necessarily recognized it as such, but now that I'm more aware of where I am currently and my perception and views of the world, I think a lot of it stemmed from that originally. Then spirituality, I would say, was definitely brought on a lot by yoga, especially going through those darker times where I did have, the depression and the lower times through my teenage years. I went pretty low, and it was a hard time for me. It was a hard time for my family. And then coming out the other side of that and becoming more connected with myself and where I am, it just kind of opened up that spiritual practice of, I suppose, taking better self-care. And then that led into, looking into breath work and how that affected my physical body, as well as kind of, I suppose, the connection that I have between my mind, body, and spirit, I guess, if that's how you want to look at it. I know people have different words for it and kind of relate to themselves differently, but for me, it really is all about connection and spirituality. And I don't even know how to explain, how I feel about everything, but spirituality to me is just, it's everything. It's that whole connectedness with, myself, yoga, the world around me, others. As quite an empathic person, I find, energy is really a strong point for me. I feel other people's energy quite strongly. And, again, that kind of leads into, my view on spirituality. I think it's all connected. But I don't know.
It's good. That's a big question, because I'm just curious and it's partly why I think I wanted to chat to you, because when we have chatted, you seem to have a similar perspective to me, in that you can kind of put yourself in other situations and kind of put yourself in other perspectives and kind of see it in that kind of new non-dual way. And I think now more than ever, it's really important. And, it's not like I'm trying to get people to look at things in the same way, but it's just offer other perspectives. And I think out of everything, that's what I'm most interested in bringing across through this podcast, and I guess through my dharma, through my purpose, is to offer other lenses to help people see. And that's interesting because you were talking about how you kind of grew up with fantasy and with witchcraft, which I'll ask about it more in a second. But I think that's the biggest thing, because we can change the external all we want. But if we're still looking at it from the same lens, it's not real. Nothing much is going to change, and we'll constantly always be looking at changing our external environment. Whereas, like, I think it's like, did you ever have one of those things when you were a kid, where like that kaleidoscope thing where you press the thing and it like changed the? Yeah, it's kind of like that. It's like you talking about how you perceive things as offering people maybe your own little like kaleidoscope thing. Understanding that some people are probably listening to this and not knowing what I'm doing, because if you're not watching the video, but I'm putting my hands in front trying to illustrate it. Hopefully you know what I'm talking about and does not sound like a crazy person. But yeah, so that's what I'm really interested in. And so I'm interested in how I guess what's going on in the world at the moment, what was happening back when you were in that kind of dark space. Like, how did you shift your perspective, and what was it that really helped you more than anything? Like, if you could give advice to somebody who is in like a dark place now or has been, like, what is there like a key? Is there a trick, or is there a hack? What would, if you can simplify it in some way?
See, it's hard because I know everyone's situation is different. And, like I was very lucky. I had a family who was there to support me. And I know other people who are going through those hard times don't necessarily always have that. They might be very alone. They might not have that connectedness and support around them, which kind of makes it hard, because then you feel like, well, what am I doing it for? Especially if you have that feeling of hopelessness already. It's like, what's the point? What's the point in, looking for something more, something better? Why? No one cares. I'm by myself. So I guess it's tricky. It's a tricky question, but I think, I have spoken to people who are in those dark places, and I think the key is really, they have to want to get better. They have to want to make it better. They have to want something more, because, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink it. It's entirely up to them. They have to make that decision within themselves. And when they do, then you can be there to help them and kind of guide them and show them other things. But when they're in that space, all you can do is, be there to hold their hand and show them that you're there. Like, they're not alone. And there are things that are better. You can show them the positive things. You can lead by example. You can show that there's more than that, the dark, lower space that they're currently inhabiting. Yeah. And it's not about just being like, oh, sunshine, roses, think positive thoughts. It's not as simple as that when you're in that space. It's really not as simple as that.
Yeah.
But just being there to hold their hand, know that, there are better things.
Yeah. And what was it for you that helped? Because, it is very personal, and it was a really hard question, so you answered it really well. But, what was it for you in particular?
I think for me, I had gone through it for a long time. Like, I was in and out of hospital for 4 or 5 years, and I had attempted suicide 2 or 3 times, nearly died. I had scared my parents half to death. I had, tried to kill myself and survived. And I think that to me was like a sign, something needs to change. This can't go on. You survived for a reason. Like, why are you doing this to yourself? This can't be all your life is worth. You can offer more to the world. And I think that for me, that was like the biggest thing, is like, okay, well, I need to do something to change this, because I have literally wasted 5 years of my life. Like, why am I doing this to myself? What am I gaining from it? Does it make me happy? I'm not happy. So obviously something needs to change. And from there, I guess it just did. That's probably when I started really heavily getting into social media. I was kind of, on that upward spiral of, okay, things can get better. I can start making a positive difference into the lives of others, which, kind of sparked that whole journey, which was important for me at the time, because it also, I feel, kind of left me accountable. I was putting on a show not only for myself but for other people. So I was like, okay, if I want to help others be better, then I've got to lead by example, you know?
And you got to stick around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's my biggest turning point.
Yeah, I really love that. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, it's interesting. It's funny our similarities, because I really started getting into social media, and especially Instagram, when I was in a really dark place. I feel like when, it rains, it pours kind of thing, was going through a breakup, going through a lot of different things. Yeah. And I just felt like the only way to get it out is to write it. And so I wrote it, and I just put it up as like a post on Instagram, kind of like a self journal. And then I had just one message from somebody just saying, hey, like, I really resonate with what you're saying. Like, I feel the exact same way. And like, that was a turning point for me. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it really just sparked something in me that, one, I'm not alone, and two, yeah, like purpose. And I've got to like share this. It can help other people, because I'd really love to chat to you, because I think I see and hear a lot about the negative aspects of social media, mm-hmm. but there's so many positives to it. And I'm sure you've had the same experiences with me of like, oh, maybe I should just delete everything and quit and just, be a proper human out in nature again. And, but yeah, there's like, I've always decided not to, because I feel like there's so much beauty and so much benefit. Like, we wouldn't have connected otherwise. Right. So, what would you, yeah, I don't even know the question to ask, but do you know what I mean? Like, what's your thoughts on all that?
Oh, look, I've looked at it from both ends as well. I'm like, yes, there are some really negative aspects of it. And, back when I started social media, there was that heavy influence on, it was that still, as a woman, it's that whole really super skinny, you've got to have a thigh gap, you've got to have, collarbones. It was that really heavily focused on appearance. And from that aspect, social media is not good. It can have that really unhealthy influence, especially on young girls, young boys, because, you have this, I suppose, perfectionized view of the world, because people only highlight specific areas of their life. You think they live this perfect life, and, they could literally be crying in a corner when they're not taking this perfect photo. So from that aspect, I think it's not such a great thing. But like anything, there's that duality. You have that positive effect where you can connect with so many like-minded people all over the world, which is so incredible. I've met people from Germany, from Holland, from South America. There's just so many incredible relationships that I've made through social media. So there is that positive effect of it, and the fact that you can positively influence people who are going through a hard time or who just need a bit of motivation in their life. There's that positive, effect that you have, and connectedness that you have with so many people, like hundreds of thousands of people who you wouldn't have been able to connect with at all, without that social media presence. So duality, positives and negatives, but yeah, I 100% get what you mean. It depends how you look at it. Like anything, there's never one side to the story. There's the good and the bad, and it depends on your relationship with it, I think. And that comes down to the relationship itself.
For sure. And I really liked what you were saying yesterday, how that because you kind of like jump on for a little while and then you jump off, because you said you want to make sure that you can be present when you show up on there. You don't really want to like show up and just put up a post just to make sure the algorithms are like, are in your favor. And you want to kind of show up fully. And I've never really heard anyone put it that way before. And I really liked it. And it actually sparked something in me to, I guess I do try to do that, but I also, like, to be honest, chase the algorithms, because like, I know, like, you probably as well have been punished by, trying to create a bit of an account and be punished because of that. But yeah, it's like finding the balance between like, why are you doing this in the first place? And I think we lose track of why we started doing that sort of stuff in the first place. So yeah, like what advice would you give to someone who is having, I guess, a love-hate relationship with social media at the moment? Like, if there's any advice that you could give to someone.
See, that's a tricky one as well, because for everyone it's a little bit different. I mean, at least speaking from experience. I was gonna say, what do you do? Like, how's your relationship with it at the moment? Like, how do you use it, both through your own personal experience and for sharing? Mm-hmm. Look, in the past, it was I found when I started initially, it was easier because I was still at school. You know, I was doing my year 11 and 12, but I was doing it via distance education. So I had like more free time, more free energy to put into like what I wanted to create. When I started working and I had less time, I had less energy, and I found that I wasn't able to be fully present. You know, I kind of liken it to having a conversation with someone, but being on your phone. It's like you're listening to what they're saying. You might be throwing in a few words here or there, but you're not actually paying full attention. You're not really present with it. For me, that's the same when I post, when I'm connecting with, you know, individuals. I may not see them as people, but they're still reading my words on their phone, or they're still, you know, watching my reels on IGTV. They're still paying attention. So for me, if I'm not present, I feel it's not authentic. And for me, authenticity is a huge thing. So if I can't be fully present and authentic with the content that I'm putting out, I feel it's not genuine, and I feel like it doesn't bring the same value to people's lives than, or if I was present and if I was being genuine with what I'm saying, I feel that there's a lot more meaning behind it, and people can gain more from that if I'm really connected with them, you know? I think there's a lot more meaning and I suppose goodness to be gained from it. You know, if you're going to put content out into the world, at least make it matter, at least make it personal, at least make it real, because there is enough fake BS on social media that people don't need more in their life. You don't need to contribute more BS. We've got enough of that. So I think it's important to find that balance. You know, if you feel that you're spending too much time on social media and it's draining you, then that's not a good thing. You need to look at, you know, where you can start cutting it out of your life, or, you know, what leaves you feeling, leaving your cup full versus leaving your cup empty. It's kind of in between. But yeah, for everyone that's going to be different. Some people can put in, you know, 24 hours work over the space of a week and find that that's fine for them. Whereas other people, it might just be a post every second day. It might be, you know, once a week. And I know it's hard if you intend to make social media your means of, I suppose, business, if that's how you intend to make money. But then I also feel like you're less likely to have a 9-to-5 job elsewhere. Like you're going to have more energy to put into social media. Whereas if you're someone who works 9 to 5, but still wants to have a presence on social media, you're more likely to only be wanting to say post once, twice a week. So again, it's really unique to every person and their own situation. But it's, yeah, I mean, everyone's going to find their own balance as long as they feel good about it.
Yeah, and I guess finding your own way of showing up, I think as well. I think people forget that there's so many different avenues to do that. I was actually chatting with a friend today about podcasts and things like that, and how I'm finding after doing a lot of these podcasts that this is really like my natural way, like, and I really enjoy it. I'd much rather like have these conversations and put content out this way than to, you know, do a lot of posts and do all those kind of things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%.
So like, how do you, because you've created videos before in the past, you do posts, you know, graphic content, not so graphic content, like as far as like you take pictures, because do you do a bit of photography and things like that?
I would actually like to get into photography at some point, like actually look into it and learning a lot more about it. Because for me, you know, it's just pull out your phone, take a snap here or there, but yeah, actually kind of study it and learn more so that I can improve my content in the future. And that includes video and whatnot. But no, like I enjoy writing things, because I find like even this now, kind of thinking things off the top of my head, I struggle a bit. Whereas if I can write it down, it's a bit more conducive, makes a bit more sense. Whereas when I'm just talking, I run off on a tangent and doesn't always make the most sense. So writing is good for me. But
I think they're both good, but yeah, you're right. Like, you know, you can really simplify and consolidate a lot of ideas into writing and make it a little bit more like palatable. But I also really I love the tangents. I love I feel like, yeah, in this kind of medium, there's just so much more opportunity to go on tangents. And that's why as well, like I don't like giving people a lot of like pre-made questions, because I just like to see where things flow and almost putting people on the spot a little bit. Like even some of these questions, like I didn't really even plan on asking, and you definitely didn't even know that they were coming. But Yeah, and they're big questions. So it's interesting to see what your like psyche pulls out last minute, because like even when I've like taught classes or presented at like festivals and stuff, I plan, but I like to leave a little bit of gap, because that's where I think magic happens. Like,
Sure.
because I think that we don't realize how capable we are of doing things unless we're actually put on a spot and like kind of put in under pressure a little bit. And yes, it can be, yeah, like, you know, it can be make you feel a bit anxious and overwhelmed. But I think that little bit of pressure can actually pull out some amazing things, and we don't realize until we've actually got that opportunity to do it, like what is inside of us. And yeah, have you got any moments you can think of that like that's happened? Or
can I use a physical representation as a
sure.
as a scenario? I remember doing a dance audition once, and we were supposed to have choreographed something pre-made, and I'm hopeless at choreographing, so I totally freestyled the whole thing, but I nailed the audition and I got through. So
Yeah.
I just put on the music and that was it. But yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind. But yeah, no, I know what you mean. I mean, I've seen some people do amazing things under pressure when they had no idea what was coming, and then they've achieved something absolutely miraculous, just pulling it out of a hat.
Yeah. Well, that's why I love like yoga. Like I love psychology in general, but I'm realizing is like the more I delve into yoga and tantra, especially, how much it explains the psyche. And like even though you freestyle that, like your subconscious might have been working on that freestyle routine for a while. So like you might have been like, I've got to do this like dance audition, and then your psyche is just like, all right, I'll work on it. You just go about your business. And then like your body, and that's the thing, like your body has a mind as well. And I think there's like, we just don't give, because I'm really interested, because I love that you brought up your relationship with exercise and all that sort of stuff, because, and how you even like said, like mind, body, spirit, because we do tend to separate them. And I think people have like better relationships with certain parts of themselves. But really it's all integrated. So I'd love to chat about that more, but while I mention the word magic, I want to get onto that actually before I forget about it. Because otherwise we're going to go on a million different tangents and I won't get to chat to you about all the other things. So we might have to do a part 2, but I would love to know what your relationship with magic is, like what the word means to you. When you were talking about you got into witchcraft, like what does that mean? Like, is there certain authors or books or just all the things?
Okay. I think when I was younger, the first thing that really got me into witchcraft itself was, did you ever watch Charmed as a kid?
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely loved that show. That was probably my favorite thing growing up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. There's always been something about it. And then I read the book Aragon, like the Aragon series.
Yeah. I've read the first one of the series. I haven't read the other. I think there's 3, is it?
4. Yeah.
4,
I think it was originally meant to be 3, but he ended up making 4. And then of course, like Harry Potter. I mean, everyone knows Harry Potter, but I know I've always felt that there's more to reality than what we necessarily perceive. I mean, I feel like we're very limited in what is actually happening within our reality. And the more you kind of tune in with yourself, the more you tune in with your intuition, the more you kind of start feeling things more than you can see. I don't know if that makes sense, but you just feel like there is more. And I feel with magic, magic just means a lot to me. I don't necessarily look at it as all like just spells and your typical Harry Potter stuff. I think magic is kind of, it's that ethereal, it's the kind of the unseen, the mystical, the stuff that we don't pay attention to, the stuff that we just attribute as nonsense within society. I think there's just so much to learn, and there's so much to see and to feel, and I feel like the physical world that we perceive is limited. It's it's not all there is. And to me, magic is that kind of like the unknown, that element of more, I guess. But yeah, I suppose what brought me into it was those kind of things, like the fantasy worlds, the different worlds, the possibility of more, that we are capable of more than we necessarily accept within the world that we live in. And the idea that we can do stuff with our minds, that we can use nature to heal, to protect us from things, that I don't know how much of it is actually just mental, placebo effect, but I feel like I have this innate feeling that there is more and that we are capable of so much more. And to me, yeah, that magic is kind of the root of that. Magic, spirituality, it's all kind of intermingles in my head. It all kind of links into one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I have a very similar perspective. And yeah, it is so much more than just spells, and because that's really the outward expression of things. And I think that's what happens is there's a concept, and then people have different ways of expressing that. And then people experience one way of expressing that, and then they label that as the same thing. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so, like I'm interested to know your first, if you can remember, or just like any notable experiences you've had with bringing that into reality. Like, was it straight away you're like, oh, this stuff's real and this stuff's like a part of my reality? Or was there like doubt there and skepticism, and then something weird happened? And how did you bring that into the world? Were you like open with it with other people, or you're like, I'm never telling anyone about this sort of stuff? Or yeah, how was it in your world?
For me, I've always kind of like really kept it to myself, because a lot of the people in my life aren't very open to these kind of things. Like nowadays that I'm more connected with myself and with what I'm intrigued by, and what actually things mean to me, I'm coming across more and more like-minded people. I think that was one of the reasons I connected with you and ritual embodiment, was because you were you were intermingling yoga with this whole ritual, with ruins, with magic. It was something that really drew me to ritual embodiment. So yeah, like the like-minded people has been hard to find. That's been a more recent thing. And now that I am more open about it, I think I've accepted it more within myself, being open to these things, being more accepting of these things, implementing more spiritual practices, more yoga, more breath work, burning sage, doing full moon stuff. Like it's just a thing that I suppose it's becoming more real to me. So it's becoming more real within my reality. The more you allow things in, the more you'll find things to support your view of things. Don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Your own reality, the more you bring into your own reality. I don't know of an exact point in my life where it became more real. It's just kind of been an ongoing thing. The more I develop my own journey, the more it kind of comes into my life, I guess. But yeah, I can't really think of an exact situation. It's, I'm not sure.
No, that's all good. I mean, I'm a bit the same. Like it's, yeah, like for me, it's like a feeling, and it's like there are notable parts of my life, but it's just always been like this underlying feeling that you want more and you want to seek more, and you're kind of like trying to peek behind the curtain type of thing of like
elements, and it's like, okay, this feels really interesting, or I'm kind of really drawn to this, I want to know more about this, and it's all about that feeling. It's not so much a conscious thing, it's just kind of that innate feeling that you have about specific things, specific people, specific areas. It's, for me, it's all about feeling. And I think that's where a lot of people get confused, because they're always trying to think about things logically, and they don't necessarily connect with that feeling within themselves or within the space that they're in. They're consciously or unconsciously trying to understand things, if that makes sense. Yeah, I think we tend to, as people, as a population, as a society, we tend to overthink things and be too much in our head rather than in our heart space, which I think is why a lot of people struggle with a lot of things. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, there's a quote I really like, and it's how's it go? It's knowledge is just a rumor until it lives in the body. Yeah, so I actually got it from. Have you ever seen a series called The OA?
I think I watched like the first season of it, or the first
Yeah,
season.
it's really good.
Yeah.
I can't remember where, but I'm pretty sure the quote was in there somewhere. But it's actually apparently it's like an Indonesian proverb. I looked it up after. But yeah, I think that's because at the start we have to intellectualize things because we have to learn about it. We have to think about it. Although some things do come up intuitively, I think it's like installing an idea and then playing with it, and then eventually like our body gets to know it, and then our body can really like express it in unique ways. And even like your experience with the dance freestyle, right? So you would have first like intellectualized dance, and then your body would have absorbed it, and then I think there's a period of like kind of that's hidden where your body's kind of absorbing and your subconscious is working out its own way of doing stuff, and you don't know that you've actually absorbed it until you go and do a freestyle audition, dance audition, and then like all this like this magical stuff happens, and then afterwards everyone's like, wow, that's really good choreography, and like
How did you do
choreography.
I don't know. So true.
Yeah.
But it's like muscle memory, your body holds on to things. Same with trauma. The body holds on to things. We may not necessarily be conscious of it, but the body is holding on to it. And yeah, again, yoga comes into that as well. It's the body does a lot of things which we're not consciously aware of. But I think that's really cool in its own way. People don't know enough about it. And I think, a lot of healing could be done if people knew what their body was capable of and what their body does for them on a daily basis. It's not all up here. It's so much than that.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that's like a really good definition of yoga that I've heard is it's just like the art and science of getting to know yourself. And and that's what, like, even different classes, like maybe going to that yin class, that like really slow class, like, you may have liked it and enjoyed it, but maybe there's a part of you that was like, I just want to move and sweat. I don't want to be with all my thoughts and everything that's coming up. And, it's interesting because I've chatted to people who've had those experiences and they don't go to yin classes. They don't go to those kind of classes because, it's too confronting, and they talk themselves out of it. They're like, no, I just want to move. That's how I feel good. And, the opposite can be true as well. But sometimes what we have most resistance to, we really need. And you're right. Like I don't know if you read The Body Keeps the Score, but that's like an amazing book of really how the body holds on to trauma and different things. And even what you're talking about before, the placebo effect, because, I don't understand how magic works. Like my kind of engineer left brain want to unravel everything side of me wants to know, but I really think there's like a part that I will never know about, and that we're all so different. Like, and that's a tricky part as well. What works for you might not work for me. And I wanted to talk about it anyway, and this is a good bridge to it, but even nutrition, right? So like, it's what works for one person can be so different for the other. And that's why like yoga has like Ayurveda, which really tries to explain it. And I'd love to chat to you about your kind of, your path into nutrition, because we've chatted a little bit about it before, and veganism, and just your perspective on that. Because how did you come into veganism, or plant-basedness, or whatever you would call it, and nutrition, and just getting to know yourself through food. I'm really interested.
Okay. Well, I think my interest in nutrition originally started with it kind of all played into part with my exercise addiction as well, because I was unhealthy when I was younger. I was overweight. I wasn't very physically active. I was always bigger than all my classmates. And I guess that kind of led into this whole, unhealthy, I suppose, relationship with exercise and food. But that's what got me into nutrition. It's like, okay, well, I need to focus on what I'm eating. I need to be eating better. I need to be eating, healthier foods, specific times, specific amounts. And it kind of escalated from there, became a bit more obsessive, became a little bit more, I suppose, unhealthy. And then, the exercise came into play, and it was just a whole thing. Veganism, on the other hand, has always been an ethical thing for me. From a young age, I was always very compassionate and not wanting to consume animals. My parents at the time, they're like, "You're too young. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know how to eat healthy. It's not healthy to not eat meat. You know, you need your protein, you need your calcium, just the usual. You don't get this when you're vegan kind of thing." So when I was like 12, 13, I kind of took a stand with that and I was like, well, okay, no, this is important to me. I don't want to consume animals anymore. So I started looking into ways that I could start implementing more plant foods so that I could still be healthy in my parents' eyes, but not contribute to that inhumane element, I guess, regarding, food. And for me, it's always been more than just food. It's obviously changing my lifestyle practices, using only natural skincare, natural products, avoiding animal stuff in everything. So again, it's more than just food for me. But I guess that's where you come into the whole plant-based versus vegan thing. That's a whole nother story. So we can go into that in a minute. But yeah, so veganism initially, again, with the unhealthy exercise, it was at the time I was on social media. High carb, low fat was a big thing. That whole raw till four, raw vegan kind of thing, it had a very influential presence at the time. So I kind of got into that for a while. A lot of the YouTube videos that I made were a lot of what I eat in a day. It was very, high carb, low fat, a little bit obsessive, probably a little bit dogmatic. I'm a little bit more balanced now. But it was important for me. It did develop a healthier relationship with food and nutrition. So I think I needed that. I mean, while it wasn't necessarily healthy, it was healthy for me at the time. And it helped develop my relationship with self and with how food affects me, with how it makes me feel, with how, food is energy. It's not like you have to restrict yourself, which I think was, again, it was really important because on social media, it was all about being as skinny as possible. And you had Michelle Bridges and Kayla Tsinas promoting, 1,200 calorie a day diets, which not so great, especially as a woman. And especially as a growing teenager, we need more energy than that. And like I said, at the time, high carb, low fat, whilst it was a little bit obsessive and a little bit dogmatic, it really got me into that. You don't need to restrict. You don't need to be cutting your calories to achieve results. Like, you can be healthy. You will be healthy eating more. So yeah, it was really important for me at the time. And it's kind of led me to a balance now where I find nutrition fascinating. I find it really interesting looking at how different foods have different nutrients, how it affects our energy levels, how eating at specific times affect our energy levels. For me, I know I can't eat first thing in the morning. It makes me feel sick, makes me feel sluggish. I definitely do better eating later on in the day. I feel really good eating a lot of raw foods. I still eat a lot of cooked foods. And for me, implementing more fats after my really low fat stage has been important. So yeah, it's really helped me become more in tune with myself. But
yeah, it's so interesting because I studied nutrition just a little bit when I was studying fitness originally, and like the difference between the expectations between men and women, and especially around like weight and things like that. But it's interesting because women, like the safe minimum fat is like 3 or 4 times more than men. So it's so safe for men to have like, don't quote me on these like figures because I can't remember. It's so long ago, years ago, but it was maybe like 3 or 4% body fat is safe for men. Whereas like the minimum body fat for women was more probably around the 10 to 12, and any less than that, and it starts to affect cycles. There's just so much that can go wrong with such a small amount of body weight, yet women are so much more expected to have less body weight. And like, guys can kind of get away with it. Like, yeah, I'm bulking. And like, it's just like, it's funny that it's just weird. I remember when I first started studying this stuff, I was like, society is strange.
It's so backward and so damaging. And this is why so many people have unhealthy relationships with themselves and, with just body image overall. And it's really messed up. I mean, you have Olympic level athletes who obviously have really low body fat because that's what's expected of them. They have crazy training requirements. They have, crazy fitness regimes, but they're not healthy. They get amenorrhea and they lose their cycles. Like, they're not exactly pictures of health. While they may be crazy fit and strong and physically, athletically very blessed, they're not necessarily healthy, and they may pay for that later on in their life. So I think it is really important to bring mind to that. And like you said, it may be okay for men to have a lower body fat, but women, they do need that little bit more, and it's not unhealthy. You know, you're not going to be fat at 10% body fat. You're still going to be really healthy, but you do need that. It's really important for physical health. So.
Yeah. And I think it comes back to what we're talking about, social media and how it's portrayed, because I know people, right, who would train for a comp and, you know, men and women, but that's not how they live and operate. Like, that kind of body fat percentage is only for that competition. So they might do it for a few months, but they even tell me as well, like all the negative effects they'll have. But the thing is, the issue is that they'll take a couple, like hundreds of pictures. They'll get like a bunch of photo shoots and do tons of selfies and things while they're at that body fat and while they're at that fitness level. And then they'll keep those for years and release them like years from now. And people still think that they're constantly, so like people from the outside, they're like, wow, they're still like that. Where I was like, I know these people. I know they're like an extra 10 kilos now. And like, they're just like, when they're taking selfies or doing videos, they're just doing it at like good angles, at, you know, like kind of, but people perceive this and they, but it's tricky because like they obviously want to be authentic as possible, but then also like a lot of people follow them just for that. And it's just a weird world. And I think people are starting to be a bit more aware of it, but you know, we might know here, like, or here in our body, but what we perceive still changes that. And so like we kind of, you
constantly have to be very consciously aware of it. Like, you've got to constantly remind yourself, like, what you're seeing doesn't necessarily mean reality. You know, things can hide behind the camera. There's a lot that can be changed when you're on your phone through Photoshop or from certain angles, from certain lighting. Like, you don't know the whole story. You don't know exactly what's going on.
For sure. Yeah, because I'd love to chat about like the ethical side of veganism a little bit more, and I guess just because I think as well, like we've chatted about it a few times, but I really like your approach because it's similar to mine in that just being gentle with people, and I think this attitude can go from veganism to lots of different things, even to what's happening in the world at the moment. Is just, you know, just understanding that your lens isn't going to be the same as someone else's. And though, you know, you might see this like reality of what's happening, and even though that has a lot of validity and objectivity, and like, you know, I'm all with you on the ethical side of veganism. And when I first got into it, I just wanted to shout and shake people. But also that approach doesn't really work very much. And I understand where some people can come from, especially if they've grown up in a very different environment. What's your experience with that? And like, how do you kind of approach that? Because obviously you're still very passionate about it, but how do you approach the topic?
Oh, you said it very well, you know, being gentle with people, because I think my mindset and mentality towards not only veganism, but, you know, the current world situation and just life in general, you know, be kind. You don't know what someone's going through. You know, someone could have just lost their mom. Someone might not have money to put food on their plate tonight. Like, you don't know what somebody's going through. You don't know their situation. Like, it's not that hard to be kind. I understand things can be frustrating at times. You can feel anger. You can feel resentment towards a certain situation. But, you know, take a step back and realize that whoever you're talking to is going to be seeing things from a different perspective. They're living a different story right now. Yes, we're all human. We're all experiencing reality, but we're all seeing it from our own perspective, from our own lens, from our own point of view. And we're all going to have a different feeling, a different opinion, a different thought process. It's not all going to be the same. Even if we do have similar opinions on something, yours is still going to be different than mine. So I think it is important to be gentle. And in regards to veganism, like, I get that it's frustrating that people still consume animals, that people still, you know, test on animals, that it's a really messed up industry, but you can't I mean, a lot of us were in that situation before as well. Like most of us have consumed animals in the past. Most of us weren't aware originally, the abuse and the horrible stuff that goes on in that industry. So if somebody doesn't know, they can't change what they're doing. I think a lot of it is about education, bringing people on the same page as you. And that doesn't mean being awful to them. And the vegans that are militant towards other vegans saying, oh, you're not vegan enough because you don't do this, or you're not vegan enough because you do this. It's like, that doesn't help. That goes against the whole mindset of veganism in general. Like the whole, at least to me, the idea behind veganism is to consciously choose a path that does as little harm as possible. And to me, that's more than animals. That goes towards our fellow humans as well. And that means treating everyone with kindness and respect and compassion and not hating on them because they do one thing or they don't do another thing. Like it, just be kind. It's not that hard. And you can put your point of view across without being awful about it, without being hateful, without putting more negative energy into the world. You can be kind, and you can listen to others and hear their point of view and just try and find a middle ground, and you don't have to agree with everyone. Everyone, like I said, is going to have their own point of view, and that's okay. I think it's just being okay with that and understanding that everyone's at their own point in life. Yeah, you can't force your point of view on somebody. So.
Yeah, and kind of just meeting people where they're at, because, some people will understand it from a certain perspective, whereas like other people might be way over the other end of the spectrum. So you kind of need to, like, you can't just, if you're literally saying like that I'm here and someone else is here and you're shouting at them over there, how about you go over to them and be like, oh yeah, and then you can kind of coax them across to the other side. And then some things that's just like unnecessary, like and it's interesting to say that you looked into it since you were like 12, 13 years old. Like I can't even comprehend thinking like that at that age for me, because I just wasn't exposed to it. Like my whole family and like everyone I knew just ate a lot of meat, and and I just wouldn't have known. So having someone, if I met you at the same age, right, I just wouldn't have understood. I wouldn't have, I would have, I don't know how I would have reacted to it, but I just wasn't exposed. Because for me, it's been maybe about 6 or 7 years that I've been pretty much vegan. But yeah, it was through nutrition that I kind of entered it. And so it's a little bit different. And I say pretty much vegan because there's been instances like I was in France a few years ago, and I stayed with a friend that I met over here in Australia, and with her and her family, and her mum didn't speak much English at all. And when I got there, like she cooked up this like massive like feast and got the whole family there for dinner. It was a tiny little town in Chambéry in France, and she'd made fondue and bread. So it was just cheese, melted cheese and bread. And she just wouldn't have understood. Like, I could have gone on this big like rant about how, they shouldn't be eating cheese. But instead I just was grateful, and I sat there and I had a stomach ache for the next like 24 hours because I hadn't eaten cheese in ages. But yeah, just in that situation. And I think the problem that I have about some people's approach to like this whole thing is that like some people would literally like out me from the community for doing that. And it just doesn't need to be like that. And I think, people need to have more compassion and understanding of like, situations and stuff like that. So
there are some situations where you do the best that you can, and that doesn't make you any less vegan or any less of a person. I mean, everyone's in their situation, and like I said, you do the best that you can within that period of time, and everyone's on their own journey. So just meet them where they're at. It really shouldn't be that hard.
Yeah, I know. And that's the thing. Yeah, it's some of the thing I was talking about like earlier. It's just like seeing it from different perspectives, and it shouldn't be that hard. But yeah, but I understand. Like you get emotional about things, and that's the thing. Like emotion always trumps rationality, and emotion's good. It gets stuff done, and there's been massive movements in history that have like been caused by like emotion, and we wouldn't have achieved some of the things. But just trying to find the balance, and
that's it.
But But I got like a few more questions that I want to ask because we're getting pretty close to the hour. So I just want to make sure I get them in. So the first one is, what would be your like dream job of like, if money was no object, what would you do if basically like world was in a utopia and like we had unlimited food and money and then, you know, you just basically did what you want. If you wanted to create art, if you wanted to teach yoga, and you wouldn't need the money side of it. What would you do?
Oh, that's a really good question. There'd be so many things though. Oh, okay.
What's the first thing that comes to mind?
First thing that comes to mind, like I've got a few things that are coming up. I would love to be able to just create art. Like that would be amazing. But being able to have like a community of like-minded people and just being able to kind of live like a tribe almost. That sounds really very very old-fashioned, but just kind of being able to, you know, get back to the basics of life, contribute with one another and just kind of live off of one another, do things for someone, they have like things to do for you, being able to share a spiritual practice with somebody and with a group of people. Like, I think to me, it always comes back to connectedness and being able to create and experience life with others. And I know that's not really a job, but
I was going to say, what would be your part of the tribe? Like, you know, what if you were put in a tribe of say like, you know, 50 people or something, and then that naturally like everyone kind of found their jobs, what would yours be? Would you kind of be the mediator if like people are arguing, be like, guys, like you let me explain, would you kind of reconnect people, or would you be like out in the edge of the forest and kind of just hanging out with squirrels and rabbits and just kind of like communicating to the gods or to the animals and nature and stuff like that? What would you why not both?
Literally. I'd love personally to learn a lot more about healing with nature. So like being a healer, being able to, you know, create more food from nature. I love cooking. So learning more on that sense as well. So either being a healer or a food maker, I think that'd be probably within my element.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, like I guess that goes well because, you know, like who's that quote from? Let food be thy medicine. I can't remember who it is, like a Greek philosopher. I can't remember.
Yeah. So Socrates.
Did you say sauerkrauts? El Capitan sauerkrauts. You can tell it's getting to the end of the podcast when like I know who talked. Socrates, was it maybe?
Is that him? Yeah, I think.
Yeah, maybe. Him. We'll just attribute it to all the big Greek philosophers. They're all.
Something like that.
Because that leads me to the next question. Because this one I did ask you earlier. Is like if you were a mage, right, or if you were like a witch, what kind of like, you know, what kind of mage would you be? You know, you can make up your own, or like how would you explain yourself in a group of mages, in a house of mages, maybe?
I think elemental, like being able to control the elements. That would be really cool. And I think personally, I feel very connected with that. I feel very connected with nature. So I think it would definitely be elemental.
In like an Avatar: The Last Airbender kind of way? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly like that.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, we're definitely on the same page. If you did have to pick one element out of the main four though, what would you pick?
Ooh. It's a tough choice, I think, between water and fire, actually.
Interesting.
Opposites, but yeah, one or the other. It depends what mood I'm in.
Do you know your like major 3 star signs? Like the, you know, like sun, moon, and rising?
I knew you were going to ask that. No, I know my main star signs. I'm a Cancer.
Okay.
Yeah. So water sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you my other 2.
It's all good. You get them ready for the next podcast, and we'll delve more into that.
Good plan.
Yeah, but I feel the water. I'm a Pisces as well. I've got a fair bit of water in my chart.
Oh, amazing.
So the other question that I asked you as well earlier was if you could have any three superpowers.
Mm.
I guess within reason as well. Like, I guess like, you know, some people might be like, oh, I like want all of this. But like, if you could narrow it down to three specific kind of powers, what would you have?
I think teleportation would be really cool. Like being able to teleport to multiple places, like that would be really cool. Just imagine like teleporting yourself to like Bali.
100%. That's one of my three. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that would open up a world of possibility. Being able to fly, that would be really fun too. I've always wanted to be like, I always admire birds. Like, I think that would be the coolest thing, being able to just fly through the air. Sounds cheesy, but yeah, flying would be amazing. And also, I think maybe telepathy. It'd be really cool to kind of see into somebody's thoughts. Because honestly, you never know what somebody's thinking. I mean, you may be perceptive, but you never really know what somebody's thinking. So being able to kind of...
Do you really want to know, though? That's the question.
I know. I'm like, do I really want to know what people are thinking? But I think being able to choose, like if you wanted to read somebody's mind, you could. Like, Yeah, I think those three. It was a tough choice. There were some other ones that kind of came up for me. I was like...
Yeah.
That would be fun.
It is hard. Yeah, because I thought about flying because my three would be, teleportation, telekinesis, like the idea of like moving stuff with your mind and hands and stuff. And then healing, like kind of like Wolverine, where you wouldn't die, you just keep healing. Because I thought about flying, but then I was like, well, I could technically teleport into the sky and then like skydive down and then teleport back up. So that could also work. But yeah, there's actually a show, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, it's called The Tomorrow People.
I've heard of it. I haven't watched it.
Yeah, like it used to be, like it was actually an Australian show originally, I think. And then, because I remember watching it when I was a kid, and then they remade it. Like they remade another version, which only lasted like half a season or a season, which I feel like I was the only person that was really into it. I was like, it's so good. I hope and then it only lasted like one season. I was so sad. But they have the three powers, the three T's. So they have teleportation, telekinesis, and telepathy. Yeah. And I was like, oh, this is so good. But it was really interesting. I think you'd like it. Okay. So maybe we can get more people into it and like get everyone to email them and see if we can get another season. That would be amazing.
Good plan.
That would make my day for sure.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, is there anything else you wanted to finish up with? Anything else that you wanted to touch on? Oh, actually, no, I do have one last little question. So if for example, I know it sounds like morbid, but there's a reason for it. It's like if you knew that like you were going to die in like the next week, but you also knew you're about to be reborn, and then that you could write maybe like a few pages of advice that you would get given when you, turn a teenager or something like that. You know, just a little question to finish off.
Very little, Daniel.
Yeah. I don't know. Is there like a few sentences or what do you think the main thing that you would give advice to someone, to like your future self? And I know this can relate to like other people and the world and stuff, but yeah, really like something to yourself.
Ooh, okay. For me personally, I think it'd be something along the lines of don't care so much what other people think. That's a big one. Don't always put other people before yourself. That I think is something that I've always really struggled with. Like I'm constantly always putting other people's needs above mine. And whilst that's amazing in its own way, I feel like I've often neglected myself and my own wishes and don't always respect necessarily what I want. And I think if I could give myself advice, that'd be something that I definitely focus more on would be, look after yourself, because that's equally as important. You can't better someone else's life if you're not looking after yourself.
100%.
Yeah. I think that'd be my biggest set of advice that I could
give. Cool. Yeah, and thank you for saying that, because I feel like it's almost taboo to say that a lot, especially like in the yoga world or in this like spiritual world, like that yeah, I think that we all want to say that, you know, we want to like change the world and put the world first. And like we do to a certain extent, but, you know, it's like that cliche saying like, you got to fill your own cup first, but you really do. Like some sayings are cliche because they're like fundamental there. And that's why, yeah, it's usually the most simple phrases that that we kind of ignore. So yeah, no, thank you for saying that, because I think it's really important. And yeah, people feel guilty sometimes for putting themselves first. So
we live in like a reality where we're constantly told to go, go, go. You know, you're not supposed to rest. You're supposed to constantly, you know, being productive and not really looking after yourself, not really taking that resting kind of space. And I think that's like, if anything, this whole world situation has really taught us that, you know, being in lockdown and having to sit with yourself. And I think that's why people are uncomfortable, is because they're sitting within that space within themselves, having to deal with their own demons, having to sit within their quiet space. They have to focus on themselves, and that's neutral to people. They're not normal. It's not normalized. So people don't know how to react. People don't know how to cope. And that itself can be scary, kind of that unknown element of it. But yeah, it's kind of forcing people to look after themselves, which can be tricky.
Yeah.
But it's a blessing in disguise, I like to think.
For sure. Yeah, we can find something good out of everything.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, yeah, so where can people find you? Because actually that's something I forgot I was going to ask at the start, because your Instagram handle is Dates with Love. And yeah, just quickly, like where did that come from? I meant to ask at the start. I forgot all about it.
No, you're right. So Dates with Love kind of stemmed, I was just playing around with words, and dates are one of my favorite fruits. So I was just playing up and I'm like, oh, well, I love dates with love. And it just kind of escalated from there. And it's just kind of stuck with me since.
Yeah, cool.
Kind of childish, but yeah, like I said, it's one of my favorite fruits.
Yeah. No, I feel you. I mean, like my Instagram handle is pretty childish, but you know, it things just stick, and it's just so much easier to keep them sometimes. So
yeah, it's like the emails that you make when you're, you know, in your early teens, and then you keep them through to adulthood, and people look at them and they're like, "What were you thinking?"
I've got some. Like one of my first emails was like Mr. Hippity Hoppity, because I've always had like the rabbit thing, like the Yogi Bunny now, but like the rabbit thing's always stuck around. And I remember I had it on a resume once at a job, and I got the job because of it. They're like, I saw that, and I was like, they said to me, if anyone applies for a job with that email, they must be confident that they're going to get the job, because like I really didn't think I was going to hire you with that email address. So yeah, so I feel you on the old emails.
Yeah.
Cool. So is there any other links or any other place where you would recommend people finding you, getting in touch with you?
Not so much at the moment. Eventually. I'm not really that present on social media right now. So Instagram is the main one where I'm actually posting occasionally. But yeah, in the future, definitely. When I get my yoga teacher training done.
Yeah. You might even see some classes by Jess on the House of Mages eventually as well. So yeah, for anyone who is interested, I will put a page on the House of Mages platform with this link to the podcast where you can find all her stuff. And yeah, go and message her and bug her and tell her to get some yoga classes up eventually on the House of Mages, and we'll figure something out. Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, it was really great to like finally chat. And I think yeah, we might have to do a part 2, because there's still a few things I want to chat to you about. So
there's a bunch of topics that we could delve deep into, I'm sure.
Sure.
It was really good. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Jess.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you for listening and being a part of this episode of Make Yoga Magic Again, the House of Mages podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Arulian Cumming, and a huge thank you to Jessica Bellantonio for being my guest for this episode. If you'd like to connect more with Jessica, myself, or find out more about what the House of Mages does, I put all the links you need in the show description below. Thank you again, and make yoga magic again.